We're getting started with some basics in Photoshop. We're starting out with the very basic things, so if you're familiar with these things, you can kind of just hang out while we get through some of these, but there might be some things that you can pick up along the way. So first of all, we want to talk about a few different things, including different file formats. So you're going to have to pardon the clicking sound. A couple basic different files. You guys are probably familiar with JPEGs, and those are something that we utilize a lot, but you should be familiar that anytime you use a JPEG, it compresses that file to store it on a smaller disk space. So it uses an algorithm to change the image data while converting it, so you can tell it how much to compress, but just be aware that you're always losing data with a JPEG. TIFF files are amazing because they do not compress unless you indicate for it to do so when you save, which is really great for documenting your portfolio, but it's also really important to keep in mind that it creates very, very large document sizes. And then also what we're using here, which you will be creating when you're using Photoshop unless you save it otherwise, Photoshop automatically, particularly when you have multiple layers in a document, it saves it as a PSD, which is a Photoshop document. And that's the default file format, and the only format besides a large document format that supports all Photoshop features, including multiple layers, as I mentioned. Because of the tight integration between Adobe products, other applications such as Illustrator, InDesign, and others can directly import PSD or Photoshop files and preserve many of the features, but these can't be opened with other non-Adobe programs, so just be aware of that. When you're opening documents in Photoshop, there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm sure you're familiar with programs enough to just go into something like Photoshop and just go to File, Open, or if we're going to be talking about hotkeys, which is mentioned in the scanning video as well, or also I call them shortcuts. If you're using a Mac like I am, it's the Command button. If you're using a PC, it's the Control button, but it's also really going to speed up your process if you learn how to use these hotkeys. So you can hit Open and it'll take you to a dialog box, and then you can tell it where to find this, so on and so forth. But what I want for right now is to just open this. Pretty straightforward. Another thing that I can do from a window, hopefully you guys know this, is that you can drag it to the program and it should open from there. So that's the basics of opening, but then it's always really important to remember to save it immediately as something that you want to work with, because countless times you've probably already experienced a computer crashes or other things happen and you lose all of the work that you do. So remember to always save it as. I have a tendency to save multiple versions of the same image. As you can see here, in terms of what I'm doing, I might have like a full mock-up and then I'll have like a compressed finished one, but then I can always go back. And it's up to you how you want to save it at this point. You can either go up to that dialog box, or you can, I've got a quick shortcut reference page here that I'll be referring back to. One thing that I do quite a bit to switch between programs, if you're not familiar, is to hit the Command and Tab key together, and I can switch between different programs just by hitting Tab multiple times. So I can also use my cursor if I'm holding down the Command key to go back to that. And the other thing is, if I am in a program and I want to switch between windows in the same program, there's that accent key in the top left of your keyboard. If I hit that, then I can switch between different open windows in the same program. I'm going to minimize that. You guys should know these very obvious ones that you've been using for years, I'm guessing, including copy, paste, and cut. And I am assuming that you're going to know to hit Command O or Control O is to open, save. And then if you haven't saved it or you want to save it as something else, hit Command Shift and then S, and you can save it as something or tell it a new place to save. These are some things that are specific to Photoshop that we're going to go over in a minute. So as I have this image opened, I can start working on it. I'm going to